Combat Battle Reports. Today we bring you giant cat! Alright, so we shoot Snowball away and put him in his comfy chair. Actually, I think he might be in the litter box. I think I can hear him. But anyway, back to the game. Welcome everybody to Command Combat Battle Reports. Today we are doing Command Combat Civil War, the game that I invented. This is the 1864 expansion, the upcoming expansion that will be the last one for the game. There's no coincidence that it has the same name. This is what I named the channel after. This is going to be a large army game, army versus army. Using the 1864 rules, you will notice at the farmhouse that there are these big sticks. They are representing defensive works, which in the 1864 expansion, the Confederates have the option to place out works that are a little stronger than usual at the beginning of the game. So let's look at our armies. These are our armies for today. They both come out of the 1864 book, and you have the Union on the left and the Confederates on the right. They are full-sized armies with multiple corps, even though they are quite small. We're keeping it small because of the limited size for today and to keep the time down a little bit. But usually they look a little bit bigger than this. Actually, quite a bit bigger than this. Anyway, on the left, you have the Union with General Grant in command, and one of his special abilities is he gets to have a second army commander, and so he chose Sherman for this particular one. Right next to them, on the right, you have Thomas as the second corps commander. The first corps commander is Hooker, who's right over there with his lady friend. The first corps has all infantry, and the second corps is cavalry and artillery. It's not the usual setup, but the Union commander wanted to keep it a little bit simple today. The Confederates, meanwhile, are almost all infantry with a little bit of cavalry and artillery. Here is the table after both sides have set up. It is the attack-defense scenario in which the Confederates are the defenders and the Union are the attackers. In the 1864 expansion, the Confederates can always choose to be the defenders and get the defensive works, as you've already seen. So let's take a look at both sides here. Here are the Confederates. They have lined up along their defensive works into this field. Now, along here, it's just the fence, but they also have the cover of the field there, cornfield or whatever it might be. You got the house here, and then you've got another corps along the defensive works here. Oh, this is one of their corps, and then this is their other corps. It's Longstreet's corps here, and I believe it was McLaw's corps on this particular side. So they are, and then there's Lee right there in the center. The Union has their two corps here. This is one corps, which is just cavalry and artillery. The other corps is coming up the road. Now, the way it works in this particular one is you have, or in army scenarios, is you have one corps is on the table and the other one gets to bring in one brigade at a time. In non-army scenarios, when it's just one corps, it's one brigade, one division is on and one brigade comes on at a time. In the corps level, it is one division at a time. Oh, which means actually they have more, but they really can't bring on any more because, of course, they don't have any room. They have brought on first the oversized brigade, which is in the 1864 rulebook. One of the things, not rulebook, but expansion, one of the things you can get is the oversized brigade, which is basically Grant emptied out the didn't empty out the Washington defenses, but he got a bunch of people who had been at the artillery places defending Washington to come out and, essentially fight as infantrymen. So they're all green, as you can tell, but there's just a ton of them. In fact, people would see a regiment passing and they'd say, "What division is that?" So you're going to see that they're pretty big. The Confederates all have young and old, which is this brigade right here, meaning it's old men and young boys, so they are a green unit. They're going to be a little bit harder at defending, but we're essentially going to see how that works. So we're going to start turn one here. We're going to have 12 turns. We used in the 1863 expansion, it goes from 20 turns in the game to you roll two 10-sided dice and subtract that from the amount. We round up with an 8, so that means there are going to be 12 turns. You take 8 from 20 and then you wind up with 12 turns. Oh yeah, and also their supply wagons are going to be these. I didn't have enough supply wagons, so we're just using the tents for those, since they are in one place. All right, let's see how this battle goes. Here is the table at the end of turn 2. As you can see, the Union has brought in its entire first corps, and of course it still has its artillery there from the other corps. They are all lined up behind the heavies, which are a green unit, so it's easier to scare them away. They've even taken a little bit of damage, as you can see. That 2-man stand at the end, that is from damage. And so they have their division commander, and their corps commander and their army commander all lined up there to keep their morale going, and it has succeeded so far. So they're keeping them standing there against all of that artillery up there. Actually, it's just a grand battery of a couple of smoothbores, but also this artillery has now turned on them and is trying to do something to them, but is not quite succeeding yet, and they've got all of those units there. The real question is, which way will they go? Will they go left or will they go right? If they go left, they're up against Longstreet's men. If they go right, they're up against McLaw's men over there. Meanwhile, the cavalry has moved over here to the right. They're coming around here this way clearly, and the Confederates have moved their cavalry to be ready to intercept them when they get there. The end of turn 3, and the Union is now on the move. They have their infantry moving forward, led by their heavies, which are in a brigade skirmish formation, which basically makes them harder to hit, and it's harder for them to hit anything, but it's harder for them to be hit as well, which is saving them from that artillery fire, plus any morale that's being done to them is being saved by the corps commander and the division commander, who are risking their own lives for it, but not getting hit. It's paying off. Federal artillery, meanwhile, has now shifted their fire completely on this brigade. They have not done significant damage on the brigade, but they did manage to hit Pickett. He had a heroic death, which brings their morale down a little bit. Actually, that should be 4 instead of a 5, but anyway, their morale number, which is lower, which you actually want that number to be lower. It's a little counterintuitive, but anyway, they are standing, even though they're green. His death was so heroic that they're just like, let's do it for Pickett. Meanwhile, the cavalry over here, some of them have dismounted. You can see them over here. They have gotten off of their horses. You can see the horses from behind, and they are behind the works. Meanwhile, the cavalry itself is lined up where there's a gap in the defensive works, and the Union cavalry is coming around here. By the way, quick note, you'll notice that a lot of them do not have pins. Well, we already know what their division and corps is because of the fact that they're cavalry, and it's only one corps and division that has them. And there's so many veteran units on the table that anybody who does not have a dark blue or white or green pin is automatically veteran. Anybody who has white, like that one, is standard, and anybody who has green, like this one, is green. End of turn 4, and the obvious thing is that the Union infantry is continuing to move forward, led by the heavies, who are in their skirmish formation, which makes them harder to be hit, and they're continuing to be commanded by their corps commander and division commander, which is keeping their morale from getting out of hand. They are taking a little bit of damage. They are doing a little bit of damage in return. The Union artillery continues to fire over their heads at the line, doing a little bit more damage. We found that actually, because the Union artillery is supposed to be veteran, or at least the rifled artillery is supposed to be veteran, they are a little bit more effective. Their commander, who's actually A.P. Hill, not McLaw's, my apologies, it actually should be A.P. Hill. He's right back there leading his men. He's holding steady. He actually is taking place of Pickett, who was the division commander over there, and he's sort of keeping his men in line. While meanwhile, McLaw's is actually moving his men forward under Longstreet. Longstreet has moved his men out of their defensive works and are coming around here, possibly for a flank attack on the Union advance, because it's very clear where the Union is heading right now. Meanwhile, Lee has shifted some of the men over a little bit. Actually, it's Claiborne right there, moving the men over to get ready for an attack that's going to probably be happening right about there. Lee has moved forward into position to get ready for this attack. Meanwhile, over here, the cavalry has moved into place. They've gotten their attack order. The Confederate cavalry, the dismounted ones, are behind the works. The mounted ones are in the gap, and it looks like General Thomas is coming over there to help them. Now, his special advantage is in defense, not attack, but he might just be able to pull that off. Here's end of turn 5. Now, there's something I should have been making clear from the very beginning. I apologize. The objectives are this house and this house. This one seems to be ignored, but this one seems to be the one that everybody's going towards. You'll notice that some of Claiborne's men have shifted over to there to take the works. I had to push the house back a little bit, but they're going there to take position against this horde that is coming at them. The heavies have continued to stay in their skirmish formation, but you will notice that they're a bit more broken up. That's because they have finally gone into disorder. Just enough morale was put onto them that their commanders were not able to stop that. They continue to not be hit. This unit took over, this brigade took over for Pickett. After he's killed, you basically choose a brigade. When a division commander is killed, you pick a brigade to be the commander. They took over, they were continuing to be in blue order, but they were just being hit so hard now by well, actually really just by the pickets at the front, but also by this artillery, which is veteran artillery, that finally got through the works, damaged them enough, they took enough damage, they have now pulled back and are in disorder, but they have gone closer to their corps commander and to Lee, who is right back there. So he's, watch for him to probably defend against them. Meanwhile, over here, the Longstreet's men who have pulled out from those defenses have fired over here at the Union men who had taken position. Now, there was no division commander over there to lead them, since they're all over trying to keep the heavies going forward. So they had to pull back. They pulled back through this brigade, which has gone into disorder. They haven't really taken any losses, but it is causing some disorder in the rear. Meanwhile, McLaws, the real McLaws, is moving over here with his division. He's taking his 2 brigades around this hill, which is going to be probably around the flank of the Federals if they don't leave something back to deal with him. He may just get into their rear. Obviously, well, actually, there was some horse artillery that, instead of going on with cavalry, stayed back here, moved up to here to fire at the infantry that's come out, that Longstreet's infantry that's come out. Did not manage to do any damage, but now that's more of it that's over here that will have to deal with that flank maneuver. Meanwhile, the cavalry has gotten into place. It is ready to go out after the Confederate cavalry that's over there. They didn't move this time. Thomas, their corps commander, has gotten into place, and we'll see if they will be ready next turn to make their charge. Turn 6, and we are halfway through this game, and the action is really on. As you can see, the Union lines are pushing forward there in the center, moving up towards that wall. The Confederates have created an interesting situation here in that they have their main wall there. Lee has come along and pushed that brigade back into position, and they're holding there, but they've also put walls here on the sides. Longstreet has moved up with a brigade here, and this other one has moved up through the woods. Now, MacArthur over here has moved some cavalry up behind them. One thing that we discovered was he actually didn't need a red order sent to him. He has a special ability called If You Won't Attack Them, I Will, in which he can give himself a red order. So he ran away with his red order. Thomas stayed with this brigade to kind of hold the Confederate cavalry there. And meanwhile, the Confederates are moving around their own flank maneuver over here at this artillery, which in turn is firing over here at Longstreet, and we're kind of back at that whole thing. They're also having an artillery duel with the artillery that's back there. Now, the firing could be devastating. In fact, in many ways it was. It was very devastating here, and in fact it hit Claiborne, took him out of the game, but he used a special ability, which is to use a special ability from anyone else, anywhere, in any of the expansions. So he used Grant's He Ain't Worth the Bullet from the original 1861 book, and so he ignored being hit. It seems like a selfish special ability, not as useful as others, but he was about to be taken out of the game, and his leadership is definitely useful against these guys. So along the line, they were also taking damage. In addition, Hooker went down. In fact, he had horrible death, which decreased the morale of everybody, but increased their numbers, which basically means that they're kind of screwed. They might have run, but you had Grant right there, and you also have one of the others there. I've actually forgotten who that is. Anyway, but here's where it got particularly interesting. Barlow's his name. Barlow is the division commander. That's right there. Anyway, so it gets particularly interesting here. Okay, so you can see this was the the 2-hit number. They only needed an 8 or less on a 10-sided dice to do damage here. The Union only needed that because they were bombarding, or they were hitting with all of this infantry all along here and with this artillery. So even with the works there, they only needed an 8 or less. They rolled a 0. Confederates over here, because so many were firing on them, needed a 9 or less. They rolled a 0, so they both went low on ammo, just firing away. Didn't really do any damage on each other. Of course, the Confederates did take out Hooker over there. I guess no big loss. But anyway, actually will be a loss to their morale. But it was interesting. Out of all that fire, there hasn't been anything done over there. So that's it for now. You can tell the fighting is really heated up. This is really where it's going to be decided. There are a couple of rules notes to notice here. First of all, because they rolled 0s on each other, the units that were closest to the targets that fired go low on ammo. That would be this one and this one. However, they had their ammo supply wagons close enough to them. In this case, it's supply tents. Close enough to them that they were able to resupply them at the end of the turn, so we just took it off of those backs. The problem with the general going down, now this is Barlow, who's become the corps commander, but since that corps commander went down, everyone under his command automatically goes to a blue order, which would have stopped this charge. However, Grant is right there, and at the end of the turn, he personally sends an order over to here to these guys to continue with the charge. However, actually, you know what? He did not save it. I just realized that. Something. He did not save a command point. He used it all to keep their morale up. So, they are going to be going to a blue order. So this unit will not be charging. They will be standing out there because their corps commander was killed. Turn 7, and there was a bit of maneuvering and a lot of firing on this one. Let's take a look. So the forces over here under McLaws, they sort of stalled a little bit. This unit up on the hill moved up behind this layer of the hill, and the other one sort of stayed back. The reason is because this division is refusing its flanks. I believe it's under Smith. Even though they're in a blue order, they have turned around and are facing them, and so if they go in one at a time, it's going to be hitting piecemeal. You also still have this artillery that's there. You have Longstreet's forces still here, holding this time it's kind of an L instead of a U shape that would close in any chargers and hit them on all sides. The charge isn't going to happen because not only were they in a blue order, now they can actually switch to red order. However, they went into disorder because they got, the front rank got hit, pushed back a little bit, and caused the second rank to go into disorder. So they're all kind of in bad shape at this point, so the charge that's going to happen right up there, that was going to happen there, doesn't look like it's going to. The heavies are still here, however. They possibly could do something, as is the cavalry. And what the cavalry mainly has done, it has caused this brigade, you remember this brigade was up here at the edge of the woods, was creating the other wall on this charge, but they have actually caused that to stop. So they did do the cavalry has done their job and caused the unit to have to turn their flanks and not create that second wall, but unfortunately it is not coming at a time that's going to help too much because the Union is going to have a difficult time charging there. Over here, the rest of the cavalry is just holding each other in place. The Confederates don't seem too concerned with them as they have moved their dismounted troops into the woods to help against the cavalry that is moving around their flank. And that is it for now. Nobody's really winning at this point. There's been no commitment into the full-out combat here, and we are going on to turn 8. Remember, there are 12 turns in this. We're going to come to you mid-turn here to show you the exciting events that are taking place. Barlow decided to go ahead and do a charge himself. Even though he's the corps commander, he ordered the, the heavies to go in. I just realized that there was one unit that forgot to go in with them. So they would have actually done even better than they had. The Confederate unit that was there was shaking, was about to run, but Lee used his special ability called Lead to the Rear, which means that his unit automatically passes whatever it is, as long as he's within 1 inch of them, and then he goes to the rear. So they passed automatically, pushed back, the two got locked in combat, were losing units together quite heavily. As you can see, those are all death markers there. Then they got the upper hand, caused the heavies to pull back, but then Barlow used his special ability, which was to keep the combat going. So essentially, both of them lose 1 stand automatically, their morale numbers go back down to 1. Remember, the higher it is, the worse off it is, and the more likely they are to run. So they both went from like 8 to 1, and the combat continued, and they just kept taking losses and losses until the Confederate one ran out of troops. And actually, since they have no more left, the artillery automatically goes. Oh, and in that last turn of combat, you'll notice that Barlow is down. He's been dazed. He's not killed, but he is dazed, so any Confederates who go by there, well, he is still within 1 inch of his troops, so they'll have to fight them. But if they move away from him and he's moved over, he'll automatically be taken out. So he kind of used up himself to make that push through there, and now they are through the center. Continuing on with the middle of the turn charges, Sherman has personally led a charge over on this side, and he met with brigade commanded by Longstreet. It is the battle of the corps commanders, who are usually not supposed to be in this close, but they are desperate and both just, hurrying in there to get their men to do something. And sure enough, actually, the 1st Brigade did not make it. Their morale got damaged enough. I'm not sure I must have taken the morale die off, but anyway, they ended up not failing their morale just barely and stopped in disorder. But they were doing a double-line brigade charge in which the second line, after the first line goes into disorder, the second line can continue right on through. Got there, hit the enemy brigade, was doing just a ton of damage to it, and so Longstreet pulled him behind the fence. So we're at the end of a very active turn. You saw the charges that took place, the charge that took place right there in the center, and the one that came over here and pushed Longstreet back behind there. You also had McLaw's men came up over this hill, had a firefight with this infantry. They got the worst of it. They took some damage and went into disorder. Meanwhile, the Confederate troops started to back up in this area. These guys got remounted, which implies they're probably going to move back, seeing as there is only Union troops pouring through here. So this flank is probably about to fall, but really all they need to do is keep the Union from occupying this spot and this spot. What they win, basically the object is, it's all based on points, but your main objective on both sides is to be the only one within 10 inches of either of those buildings. Turn 9 went basically as predicted. The Confederates are moving out of there, although they are going in march column, which means that they are a little bit more desperate than thought before. They're trying to move back there probably as fast as they can. Their cavalry is moving back to kind of screen their retreat, while the Union cavalry is pressuring on both sides. The infantry that was involved in this charge has reorganized, along with the infantry that was here reorganized, and they're going after the one right by that house. That's really where the action is going to take place at this particular point. That's going to be really what this whole thing comes down to. Meanwhile, they got into an L shape with Sherman in the middle there. Because the Confederates have come around this end, they seem like they might not have done that much, but actually they have slowed down this charge. All of these troops would probably be charging that area right now, if not for the McLaws's division coming around. However, in doing that, they really have sacrificed themselves, because they really got slaughtered by this infantry, and in particular this artillery on them. It was maximum amount of firepower, rolled as well as they could, took a severe amount of damage, and retreated there. And there you have it. Even though they were only on turn 10 and there were supposed to be 12 turns, we are going to call it, because the Union made a charge all along the line there. You can see right there, that didn't work out, that didn't succeed, and the Confederates are now reforming their lines along there. There was also a charge along here that didn't succeed. The Federals did a huge amount of damage to the Confederates, but they did not push them out of their entrenchments and away from those objectives. I'm going to put the score up there because this is going to be close. The Federals did a ton of damage to the Confederates, but the Confederates held on to the objectives. Now, of course, the Union could form again and try to go after it, but they wouldn't be able to do it in time with the turns remaining. So that'll do it for us here at Command Combat Battle Reports. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to subscribe, and happy gaming, everybody!